I think that's where our curiosity spans. So this is basic outline of our presentation. We'll talk about the challenges, the cluster, dynamics of Train 7, going digital, impact of tech, possibility of disruption. So basically, in a nutshell, this is what we do at Megasource Law Practice: regulatory compliance, policy review, contract drafting and review, project financing and advisory, local content advisory, and we also do corporate immigration, and we advise quite a number of people that want to do business in Nigeria. And ever since Train 7 came, there's been very strong interest on how they can do business in Nigeria and to do it safely. So basically, this is a review of some of the things that we've done. Let me jump. For our LNG practice in particular, we do offer business advisory on tech solutions, regulatory compliance, we do due diligence, contracting strategy. Part of the contracting strategy we're talking about today is EPC contracts. We also do drafting review of contracts, LNG truck loading, that's for domestic, that will actually cover domestic use of LNG, franchising of LNG filling stations. We have 1 or 2 LNG filling stations in Nigeria, project financing. So let me just go on so you can get to the meat of the presentation. Okay, so just as the good news was coming for Train 7, the world has to deal with a couple of threats. And let me just run through them. There were trade wars going on between America and China, and that had a way to slow down the global economy in a way. Then we're also having the oil price war between Saudi Arabia and Russia. That's what I mean by the LNG industry can be localized, but it's also a global industry because what happens in one place can affect the world all over. So the other issue we've had is LNG oversupply. For the buyers, that's a good thing, but for the sellers, that's not a good thing because we're seeing from TTF prices and other LNG prices, you know, Henry Hub hovering at $1, $1.02, $3 from the times when it was $5 MMBTU, $7. But right now, because we have so many LNG projects coming up at the same time, demand is slowing down from China, slowing down from South Korea, slowing down from Japan. Japan has restarted their nuclear reactors. So we are seeing that demand is not as strong as it is. So while the world was still dealing with these 3 pressures, then the COVID-19 crisis started. And to a large extent, that triggered off a couple of lockdowns. And that led to a shortfall in demand for oil and gas. So for the African continent, and not just for Nigeria, it looked like it wasn't very good news. But in the midst of all this bad news, the shareholders of NLNG actually gave us quite a bit of good news by deciding to go ahead with the much long-awaited NLNG Train 7 project. So basically, when there are low oil prices, part of what we see is that oil and gas companies, they drop their rigs, they cancel some projects, they slow down some other projects, they drop their vendors, and they drop some staff. It has an impact on their headcount. So, but NLNG has said to go ahead with the $10 billion Train 7 project. So let's look at the Train 7 project in a nutshell. As Mehdi mentioned, Saipem and Chiyoda are taking the lead with the EPC. It's meant to attract at least $10 billion. It's meant to increase NLNG's capacity from 22 metric tons to 30 metric tons. That's 8 additional metric tons per annum. NLNG Train 7 is meant to create over 10,000 direct jobs and maybe 40,000 indirect jobs. I know the bulk of those jobs will actually be created during construction, and that construction stage take maybe 5 years, 4 years, because NLNG has to meet that window of opportunity. Some of the LNG contracts for supplying LNG to Europe should actually expire around 2025. And you know that on average, the volumes for a new LNG plant are contracted before that plant is built. So NLNG needs to work with time, and I'm sure that they're going to make that window of opportunity. So NLNG shareholders are NNPC that has 49%, Shell has 25.6%, Total has 15%, and ENA has 10.4%. In reality, the IOCs put together have more shares than NNPC. So, okay, let's move on to the next slide. So the basic clusters in the LNG value chain, basically we start from upstream development, then the LNG plant itself, LNG transportation, then if you notice there are houses in the background, that's regasification. So when the LNG is shipped into the buyer's ports, they eventually will regasify it or transport it by LNG trucks to the users. Okay, so let's look at NLNG milestones. NLNG has received a couple of accolades. From inception, NLNG has done over 4,800 cargoes. NLNG has 23 LNG ships. He has 6 LNG trains. He has an asset base of over 11 billion. He has garnered over $110 billion in revenue. Then he has paid out a whopping $35 billion in dividends. So I'll say NLNG is doing well. So let's do a quick comparison between NLNG and QatarGas. That's his former company. So QatarGas has 14 LNG trains. It has 6 mega trains. QatarGas has 183 offshore production wells. QatarGas has pioneered, ship-to-ship LNG delivery. QatarGas is able to do ship-to-ship transfer in open waters. QatarGas has 70 LNG vessels, and the biggest LNG vessel in the world, I think it's still the biggest, QMax, that has a capacity of, 265 cubic meters, is owned by QatarGas. So let's talk about the business value chain in Train 7. So if you look at Train 7, the initial value chain will be the EPC stage, and that's going to take 5 years. Okay, let me backtrack a bit. The first cluster in the value chain will be the early earthworks, the digging, the clearing the land, the piling. So it's possible that NLNG may want to do that themselves, do that through direct labor or through their staff. So the next part of it will be the EPC value chain. That takes like 5 years. That's basic engineering, that's owner engineering, detailed engineering, procurement, purchasing, then construction, civil engineering, and the other works. So after the EPC stage, that's for Train 7, we have the operations and maintenance stage. So that goes on throughout the life, the life of the plant. And there are already 6 trains in existence. So you already have operations and maintenance, and the average lifespan for an LNG plant is between 25 to 40 years. So we are saying there are 6 trains. So if you peg it at, say, 40 years for the 6 trains, that's like 240. Then another 40 years for Train 7. That means you have like a 280-year window for operations and maintenance activities for the entire Train 7. So for the Train 7 itself, we have the early earthworks, then we have the EPC stage, then we have the operations and maintenance, then we also have the part where NLNG wants to simplify its business processes. And interestingly, that announcement was made before the COVID-19 crisis. So NLNG has always had plans to simplify their business processes and to digitalize their business processes in a way to optimize, profits, reduce their risk, manage their costs, and make them more resilient. And we know with the COVID-19 crisis, it has made it imperative for not just NLNG as a company, but for other oil and gas companies, and I think companies all over the world and in every sector of the economy, to look for ways to go digital. Because those lockdowns made it imperative for companies to accelerate their digital transition strategies. So in a nutshell, this is a summary of the advert that NLNG put out a while ago, and this is what they'll be looking at when they say they're going digital. So they're looking for services from tech companies for data science and analytics, artificial intelligence, cloud solutions, Internet of Things, wireless solutions, automation and robotics, and visualization, programming and software development, and of course animation. That should also be part of it. So let's move forward. And sorry, I forgot to mention that for the value chain, for those that are interested in playing in the Train 7 project, there's also local content. And for under local content regulations in Nigeria, a local content, a Nigerian company, quote and unquote, will be one that has a minimum shareholding of 51% held by Nigerians, leaving a window of 49% to be held by foreigners. So for those that want to do business in Nigeria and they're saying, hey, I'm a foreigner, can I still get a leg in the door? I say that you can, and if you're willing to come in, we'll be willing to guide you on the best way to do that business here. So for those tech companies that are looking at providing tech solutions, not just for NLNG, via Train 7 or some other projects, and you know that that's not the only LNG project going on in Nigeria. There's the Greenville LNG project that's solely for domestic use in Nigeria. There's a Greenville LNG project. There's the Ajaokuta LNG project that's gotten a license to establish. And there are 2 pending LNG projects. That's Brass LNG. I think, interestingly, Brass LNG was meant to use the ConocoPhillips Cascade technology for its liquefaction. And there's the OK LNG projects. Those 2 projects, I would say, are pending. So basically, if you're looking at Train 7, you can also look at the local content parts of that project. And I hear that approximately $2 billion has been earmarked for local content companies to play in that project. And I hear that the entire construction phase is going to be done by local content companies. So back to the tech companies, which I'm sure are very keen on hearing what opportunities are available for them. So if you're going to be doing tech solutions for energy companies, you can look at the value chain or providing solutions from 2 or 3 perspectives, but we'll look at it let's look at 3 perspectives. The first perspective will be the challenges that the world faced. That's COVID-19, LNG, oversupply, the oil price war. So if you look at those challenges, those are the challenges that oil and gas companies have had to face. And that's a challenge that LNG companies too are facing. So if you can come up with solutions to address those challenges of low oil prices, disruptions, companies going digital, the need for climate change, if you can do that, you will have added some value to these companies, and of course, they'll be keen to get you on. So if you're going to be doing value-centered tech solution, these are some of the things that you'll probably be looking at. You'll be looking at solutions that can help companies to reduce their risk, manage their costs, improve their profitability, increase production, and of course, reduce their environmental footprint. So if you're wondering what's happening in the energy tech space in Africa, but let me use Nigeria as a case study. We've already mentioned that NLNG wants to go digital. NCDMB was hosting, and I think they're still hosting this oil and gas hackathon. I think the top few contenders or top few ventures should get seed fund of approximately $10,000. Then there's a bit of mentorship, there's an incubator program of at least 3 months. So that the Department of Petroleum Resources, also in Nigeria, there are initiatives for going digital. And part of, the DPR is the part of the Federal Ministry of Petroleum Resources. Those are the regulators, part of the regulators, they regulate the oil and gas industry in Nigeria. So if you're going to be doing business in Nigeria, you're going to be relating with the DPR because you need a license before you can do any form of oil and gas business in Nigeria. So there's the National Production Monitoring System, also called COPT. That's crude oil and LNG tracking. I think that's been handled by a French firm. So they help to track the crude oil cargoes, LNG cargoes in Nigeria. There's the automatic downstream system. There's the accelerated lease renewal program. Those are actually, so we have one private initiative by NLNG, then like 2 regulators doing initiatives that have to do with going digital. So let's talk about problem-centered tech solutions. So part of the problem that the energy industry and LNG companies in Nigeria and other African countries will be facing will be some level of pipeline vandalism. We're seeing not just oil and gas companies, LNG companies having to deal with it. In cyber threats, the thing about cyber threats is when your operations are analog, basically what's there to hack, there's a lot of paperwork going on. But once you go digital, you open yourself up to the benefits of going digital, then also to the threats of going digital. Part of the other challenges that LNG companies will be facing with supply chain disruptions, logistics inefficiencies. Some analysts and some reports I've read thrown some light on the cost of doing business in Africa, the cost of oil and gas projects in Africa. So some people argue that logistics in Africa can be a bit more expensive than necessary. So you also be looking at the possibility of reducing that skill gap in the oil and gas industry. Some people argue that that mid-level managers, those mid-level managers are disappearing too quickly. And some would say that it's because of the oil and gas price cycle. Once the oil prices drop, companies tend to drop staff, and some mid-level managers are not too comfortable with that level of job security. Then of course, accountability, that's why we're having the crude oil and LNG tracking system being used in Nigeria and in some other African countries. Basically, countries want to know where their cargoes are going to and how much they are making. So part of the tech opportunities that I think that fintech and other tech solution providers should be looking at will be the domestic uses of LNG. So LNG can be used for heavy duty vehicles, buses and trucks, ships, ferries, quite a number of ways. So let's look at, say for example, a typical LNG import terminal. Say like whether it's the South Hook or the Dragon or the other import terminals in the UK. So basically, if you're bringing in LNG, you're bringing in the ship, the docking, the fenders, the mooring, evacuating the product from the vessel into your facility, storing it in your tanks, making sure that entire operation goes safely. There's a lot of software handling so many parts of those operations. And so imagine if we're going to do domestic use of LNG in Nigeria, which is provided for in the national gas policy, and somebody sets up an LNG terminal, whether it's an import terminal, it's a storage terminal, and a regasification facility. You can imagine all that's going to be needed, all the technology that's going to be needed to do that. So that's something I think any discerning investor should actually be looking at. So let's just run through part of the technology that can be used within the oil and gas industry and within the LNG space. This is something that, animation is something that is huge within the energy space. It's used for training and safety. It's used for promotion and sales. It's also used for investor and community relations. And I'm talking about business-oriented animation. I'm not talking about cartoons. So if you want to train your staff, rather than having to bring in those facilitators over and over again, using animation that can be stored on the cloud, that's very easy for your staff to access. Vendors that come to your facilities can get up to speed training on safety procedures, whether or not there will be fire drills, how the typical evacuation plan in your facility plays out. So basically, animation is something that some companies need to be looking at for the oil and gas industry. Data science and analytics. You know, part of the question that energy companies would be asking is, how much data do we have access to? Are we ignoring the data that we are generating? Because oil and gas fields generate a lot of data. But one of the insightful questions I think I've heard asked at some of these gatherings of C-level leaders are, what's the loss? What losses are we making by ignoring some of that data that we overlook that's being generated by our plants and by our fields? So that's part of what data science and analytics will help LNG companies do. And tech companies, I think, will be quick to jump on that opportunity. Then big data. So big data basically helps LNG companies make sense of all that data from the very broad perspective, all that data that's been generated from the wells, from the fields, from the ships, whether you're using AI to guide your ships, AI to manage your customer care. Big data helps you gather all that data, all that actionable, all that big data will help you to have actionable LNG insights, improve your LNG operation, and of course, optimize your customer experience, because we have so many LNG suppliers right now, and you want to be certain that you are giving the best possible customer experience, because LNG industry is global and customers can buy LNG from largely anywhere. Typical example would be Ghana. Ghana is importing LNG from Rosneft. That's a Russian company. Interestingly, Ghana is a part of the West African gas pipeline project that runs from Nigeria to Ghana. So Ghana, that is a part of that pipeline, is importing LNG from Russia, just to point out how stiff the competition in LNG space is. So wearable tech is happening in a big way, not just for LNG operations, but for oil and gas, because for the basic people on the field, it's important that your hands are free, and it's also important that you're able to communicate with your colleagues, with experts. If there's a pipeline leak or a valve goes bad, that wearable technology can be an embedded camera in your helmet. You should be able to seek expert opinion. You should be able to give that expert visuals of what you're facing in the field. And the COVID-19 lockdowns made this wearable technology even more essential. All that data that you're generating basically has to be stored somewhere. So you possibly don't want to invest all your space looking for on-site storage. And that's where cloud comes in. So you can store all that data in your cloud and makes it easy for whoever wants to analyze that data to just access your cloud, access it and begin to analyze it. And that's where, so now we're going to talk about blockchain applications. It makes it easier to, we're talking about smart contracts, talking about a digital identity, smart plants, we're talking about the possibility of Internet of Things, plants that can, when your plants can actually communicate with each other, that should actually help to reduce your cost. So we're talking about AI. I think AI is big in the LNG industry and the oil and gas industry generally. We're talking about AI helping to optimize operations. I think I read case studies where AI has actually helped to reduce the cost of operations for the typical oil and gas industry. And I know that particular study was rather revealing, because when the AI was running the plant, that plant was actually consuming less energy. So AI can actually help LNG companies and oil and gas companies have greener operations. And AI can also help your customer care, can help to coordinate your vessels. And I think, I'm not certain, but I think QatarGas actually has employed some level of AI to coordinate their over 70 ships. So it makes it easy for them to do their ship-to-ship transfer, translocation of ships. QatarGas ships can actually deliver products to 2 countries at the same time. The Qmax is huge at 265,000 cubic meters of gas in one Qmax vessel. So the Qmax can arguably deliver, an LNG vessel to an LNG terminal in London, and deliver another part of that LNG cargo to another country. I'm not aware of any other LNG seller that can do that. So I think that that's commendable. So visualizations in LNG operations, that's something that's also huge. It's going to help with skill development, scenario analysis, HSC trainings. So, you know, you just use those visual, like the Oculus headpiece and all the other headpieces that you have to show your staff what the possibilities are, whether you're trying to train for a certain level of skill development. Maybe you need to change a turbine in your plant and you're trying to plan it. And you know that if you want to bring out the entire turbine, it's pretty sizable. So you need to be sure that you're getting the right size of the crane can carry the turbine, everybody involved in it knows how to do the operation safely. Visualization is going to be huge. Machine learning is also, as a part of AI, that's something that's going to be huge. So when you have your plants, your turbines being able to learn and observe how they're doing their operations, it's something that's going to help you to, you know, increase your efficiency, reduce your cost of operations, and make your plant a bit greener. Because machine learning coupled with Internet of Things, that gives you that smart plant that helps you to reduce your cost and increase your profitability. So Internet of Things is when your plants, you know, your plant is connected in real time by internet when the machines are talking to each other. So imagine maybe a turbine is operating below capacity. So rather than having your workmen inspect it, although they will still inspect it, your turbine is able to tell the control tower or whoever is in the monitoring it digitally that, hey, I'm having issues, I'm overheating, or I don't like the gas I'm being fed with, or I'm not just giving my full output. You need to change some parts, and if after changing the parts, the turbine can tell you, I'm sorry, I think I'm reaching my shelf life, and you're going to need to replace me. So wireless solutions are also critical. So imagine you have your plants, you have your vessels, you have your truck loading plants. You really can't have wires running everywhere. So even if you want to have wires running on your onshore facilities, what about your offshore facilities? What about your FPSO, your FSRU? You probably want to switch to wireless solutions that makes it easier for you to communicate with the vessels and the other workmen there. Robotics. So that the COVID-19 crisis has brought to the fore the importance of automation and robotics. Because I had one or two colleagues that were offshore complaining about the fact that it's been difficult. Because of the lockdowns, a lot of the crews were constrained to stay on the vessels, and those on land were constrained to stay on land. And that was quite a disruption. So if you have some level of automation where there are wells, and I'm aware that some wells that are actually also fully automated and they are run remotely, robots running all the operations in very hazardous operations, that's something that can save lives and expose our experienced personnel to less risk. So programming and software development, it's essential because LNG operators also need some level of bespoke software to help them do their business and to do their business in a cheaper, better, and faster way. So for tech companies, I hear tech companies are always saying things like, we're going to disrupt the environment, we're going to disrupt the energy industry. That's fantastic. But the reality is, before you can disrupt an industry, you're going to need to understand how that industry is before you can disrupt that industry. So basically, for tech companies, we'll be saying, in a nutshell, seek advice, understand the oil and gas industry, understand the LNG industry, understand the facts, understand the oil and gas industry, understand the fact that the average oil and gas industry is also a tech company. Shell makes billions of dollars from licensing its technology, licensing intellectual property. Same thing with Exxon, Baker Hughes, Schlum, Halliburton. Those companies, Siemens, a lot of them have tons and tons of tech protected by tons of intellectual property, generating billions of dollars in returns. Then you need to identify a need. Can you do it cheaper, better, and faster than the other guys? Do you understand the terrain better than some of these other companies? So you just need to find a way to innovate. Who would have thought that today we'll be having this conversation over Zoom and not at the 4 points in Ikoyi like we planned? Develop the opportunity, then of course market your deal and close the deal. So basically, we also do training proposals. We also do NLNG 27 trainings.